The first thing I became aware of was the steady beep of hospital monitors, not in the usual way. I couldn't open my eyes or move my body, but I could hear everything. The rhythmic pulse of my own heartbeat, the squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum, the hushed, devastating conversations happening around me. My name is Emma Mitchell, and according to my husband, James, I was dead. It's time to let her go, he said, his voice carrying that well-rehearsed grief I had learned to recognize over 10 years of marriage. The doctors say there's no hope. But the doctors had said no such thing. Just that morning, Dr. Peterson had told the nurses my brain activity was improving. I knew, because I'd heard her. The signs are promising, she had said, we just need to be patient. But James wasn't interested in patience, or hope, or the truth. I had been in a coma for 6 weeks, the result of a car accident, the same accident James had walked away from without a scratch. The same day I told him I wanted to look at our joint accounts because something wasn't adding up. Your sister would want you to move on. Sarah's voice, my best friend, the one person I trusted more than anyone. Her words were gentle, comforting, the same tone she used when she was lying. Emma wouldn't want you to suffer like this. I wanted to scream, to thrash, to grab them both by the throats and demand to know what game they were playing, but I could only lie there, listening as they planned my funeral. A funeral for a woman who was very much alive. The next few weeks were a blur of conversations and revelations, each more horrifying than the last. Through passing nurses, unknowing relatives, and whispered conversations in my room, I pieced together the truth. James had declared me brain dead, held a closed-casket funeral, delivered a moving eulogy about losing the love of his life. Then, he collected my life insurance, $2 million. And Sarah, my dear, treacherous Sarah, had been right there beside him. The insurance company didn't even question it, James said one evening, his voice low and gleeful, $2 million, just like that. Your plan worked perfectly, he added. Our plan, Sarah corrected, I didn't spend a year helping you set this up for nothing. A year. They had been planning this for a year. Every dinner party, every girls' night, every sympathetic hug when I worried about James's late nights. All part of their scheme. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that I wasn't as helpless as they thought. Lisa, my night nurse, was the first to notice, small things at first, tiny twitches in response to her questions, a change in heart rate when she mentioned James. She didn't tell anyone, but she started talking to me. 1 squeeze for yes, 2 for no. Are you aware of what's happening? 1 squeeze. Do you understand what your husband has done? 1 squeeze. Do you want me to help you? A firm, desperate squeeze. Lisa became my lifeline. Through her, I learned that James had moved Sarah into our house. 2 weeks after my funeral, they were already discussing marriage. My sister, Kate, wasn't convinced by my so-called accident. She had hired a private investigator. She was right too. The brake lines in my car hadn't simply failed, they had been tampered with, not cut entirely, that would have been too obvious, just damaged enough to give way at high speed. The police had ruled it an accident. Kate didn't believe them. Your sister's investigator is getting close, Lisa whispered one night as she checked my vitals. He's requesting the insurance documents. James is getting nervous. Good, let him sweat. But James had other plans. I heard him arguing with Sarah in my room, thinking I was just a shell, unaware of their words. We need to move her, he hissed, private facility, somewhere far away. Once she's transferred, if something happens, well, no one would question it, she's already dead on paper. Sarah hesitated. Isn't that risky, moving her? Riskier than leaving her here. What if she wakes up? His fear gave me satisfaction. Yes, James. What if I wake up? What if I tell everyone what you've done? But I wasn't strong enough yet. Lisa had been documenting everything, my responses, their conversations, their crimes. We just needed more time. That night, after James and Sarah left, Lisa leaned close to my ear. They filed transfer papers, she whispered. They're moving you next week, but don't worry, I've contacted your sister. She's bringing the investigator tomorrow. Just hang on, Emma, help is coming. I squeezed her hand. I would hang on. I would survive. And when I finally opened my eyes, James and Sarah would learn exactly what it meant to wake the dead. The next morning brought chaos. Through my forced stillness, I heard raised voices in the hallway. Kate's familiar, fierce tone cut through the hospital's usual quiet. "I want to see my sister's medical records," Kate demanded, her voice razor-sharp. "All of them, and I want to know why her husband isn't listed as next of kin anymore." That was news to me. Lisa had been busier than I'd realized. Dr. Peterson remained calm. "Mrs. Mitchell's power of attorney was updated 6 weeks ago. Her sister, Catherine, is now legally responsible for her medical decisions." James's voice erupted. "That's impossible. I'm her husband. Her legally dead husband." Then came another voice, deep and authoritative, the investigator. "According to the death certificate you filed, Mr. Mitchell, your wife passed away over a month ago. That makes your claim to power of attorney rather interesting, doesn't it?" Silence, delicious, heavy silence. "There's been a misunderstanding," James stammered. "I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can," Kate cut in, her voice laced with fury. "Just like you can explain why my sister's brake lines showed signs of tampering, or why you took out a $2 million life insurance policy on her 3 months before the accident." Silence again, then, the sound of rapid footsteps. James was trying to run. The investigator's voice rang out. "Mr. Mitchell, I wouldn't leave the state if I were you. We have some questions about insurance fraud and attempted murder." Chaos followed. Police statements. Lisa handed over everything, her notes, the recordings, proof that James and Sarah had plotted this for months. The hospital's security cameras had done their part, too. Through it all, I kept squeezing Lisa's hand. One squeeze. "Yes, I hear everything. Yes, I'm still fighting. Yes, I'm coming back." That evening, Dr. Peterson brought in a specialist. Dr. Patel, a neurologist, ran a series of tests. "Your sister is absolutely present and aware," she finally said. "Her brain activity suggests she could wake up any day now." Kate's breath caught. "You mean?" "The transfer papers Mr. Mitchell filed, the facility he chose has a suspiciously high mortality rate for coma patients. If she had been moved there." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The next few days passed in a blur. Sarah cracked under questioning, confessed everything. The affair, the plan. James had promised her I wouldn't die, just a scare, just enough for an insurance payout. But murder, it seemed, was easier to justify when $2 million was on the line. The insurance company launched its own investigation. James had bribed someone at the funeral home to falsify my death certificate. Now, he was facing multiple felony charges. But none of it mattered as much as what was happening inside my body. Day by day, I felt more. Not just twitches, movement, strength. Then, on a Tuesday morning, it happened. Kate was reading to me, some terrible romance novel she knew I hated, when a wave of energy surged through me. A dam breaking. My eyes opened. Kate dropped the book. "Emma?" The room exploded into chaos. Doctors, nurses, machines beeping. Through it all, I kept my gaze locked on Kate. Tears streamed down her face. Hours of tests followed. Finally, they removed the breathing tube. My throat burned. My voice was barely a whisper, but I managed 3 words. "I heard everything." Kate gripped my hand. "We know, sweetie, we know." "Where are they?" I rasped. "James and Sarah, in jail, waiting for trial. They're not getting out anytime soon." I nodded weakly. "Good. Because I had a lot to say at their sentencing." Kate let out a watery laugh. "That's my sister, 3 months in a coma, and you come out swinging." But we both knew this was just the beginning. I had survived. Yes, I had heard their plans, their confessions. But now came the hard part. Recovery. And making sure James and Sarah paid for every second they thought I was helpless. They had tried to bury me. They didn't realize I was a seed. And now I was growing back stronger than ever. I still heard echoes of their conversations, James and Sarah's plans for my death repeating over and over in my mind. The preliminary hearing is next week, Detective Martin told me during one of her regular visits. She'd been piecing together the conspiracy since their arrest, following the trail that had nearly claimed my life. "Are you sure you're ready to testify?" I met her gaze without hesitation. I've been ready since the first day I heard them plotting in my hospital room. The courthouse was packed on the day of the hearing. News of my resurrection had made national headlines: the coma patient who heard her husband plot her murder, the woman who gathered evidence while trapped in her own body. Reporters crowded the steps, cameras flashing as Kate helped me walk in. I hadn't seen James or Sarah since that day in the hospital when they discussed moving me somewhere to finish the job. Now, as I entered the courtroom, I saw them both at the defense table: James, disheveled and nervous in an ill-fitting suit, his usual polished appearance gone, and Sarah, looking small and terrified beside him. When I took the stand, James refused to meet my eyes. But Sarah, she couldn't tear her gaze away, her face a mask of fear as I began to speak. "I remember everything," I said into the microphone, my voice steady and strong. "Every conversation, every plan, every detail of how they intended to kill me. I described it all, the conversations I'd overheard, their celebration of the insurance payout, their plans to transfer me somewhere I wouldn't survive. Through it all, I kept my eyes locked on them, watching James squirm in his seat, watching Sarah cry. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal," I continued, "it was hearing them talk about me like I was nothing, like the 10 years of marriage, the lifetime of friendship, meant nothing. They thought being in a coma made me powerless. They were wrong. The evidence was irrefutable: Lisa's recordings, the hospital security footage, Sarah's confession, and my testimony. There was no doubt. The judge ordered them to stand trial for attempted murder, insurance fraud, and a slew of other charges. As they were led away in handcuffs, Sarah finally broke. "Emma, please," she sobbed. "I'm sorry, I never wanted." "Save it," I interrupted coldly, my voice like ice. "Save it for the trial." Outside the courthouse, Kate squeezed my hand. "You did it, sis, you showed them." But it wasn't over yet. 3 months later came the trial. This time, I was stronger. I could walk into the courtroom on my own, stand tall as I testified again, detailing every step of their twisted plot. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty. On every charge. At the sentencing hearing, I chose to speak again. This time, I addressed the court with my eyes fixed firmly on James and Sarah. "My husband and best friend thought they could erase me," I said, my voice calm but full of conviction. "They planned it all: the accident, the fake death certificate, the insurance scam. They celebrated while I lay in that hospital bed, thinking I couldn't hear them." I let the words hang in the air for a moment, letting the weight of the truth settle in. But they forgot something important. They forgot that I'm stronger than they ever imagined. They forgot that truth survives, even when people try to bury it. And they forgot that karma comes for everyone, eventually. The judge sentenced James to 25 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. Sarah received 15 years for her role in the plot. The insurance company recovered their money, and civil lawsuits ensured that neither of them would profit from their crimes. As they were led away, I felt no satisfaction, no joy in their punishment. Instead, I felt something more powerful: freedom. 1 year after waking from the coma, I stood before a room full of medical students, sharing my story. I'd been invited to speak about coma consciousness, to help future doctors understand that their patients might be more aware than they appear. "Never assume someone can't hear you," I told them, my voice firm. "Never underestimate the power of the human spirit, to fight back, to survive, to bear witness. Sometimes, the person you think is powerless is actually the strongest one in the room." After the lecture, Lisa, still my closest friend, met me for coffee. "Look at you now," she said, beaming, "speaking at medical schools, writing a book about your experience. You've turned this nightmare into something meaningful." I smiled, thinking about everything I'd been through. "They thought they were writing my ending," I said softly. "Instead, they gave me a new beginning." That evening, I visited my old house one last time before the sale closed. Kate had helped me put it on the market. We both agreed it was time for a fresh start. As I walked through the empty rooms, I no longer heard the echoes of James and Sarah's plotting. Instead, I heard my own voice. Stronger than ever. They tried to silence me, to erase me from my own life story. But they failed. I was alive. Thriving. Telling my own truth. They would spend years behind bars, while I had nothing but open roads ahead of me. As I locked the door for the final time, I smiled. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, growing stronger, and showing the world that what doesn't kill you really does make you more powerful than your enemies ever imagined. James and Sarah had tried to bury me. But instead, they gave me wings.